Hello, everyone. I'm Chris. I'm with DRI, and I am here to introduce our awesome speakers. So without further ado, first we have Laura Christian, Director of Learning Experiences, joined Discovery Children's Museum in January 2013. She received her BS in Education from Eastern Michigan University and previously served as an elementary school teacher for 8 years. She provides leadership for the museum's 5 education departments, overseeing a team of 45 staff members. She is responsible for programming oversight, internal and external professional development opportunities, and management of staffing resources. She plays a key role in the development of new exhibits and program initiatives, and she is responsible for partnering with community organizations to plan educational collaborations, much like this one. We also have Meghan Schiedel. She is the School and Museum Programs Manager at the Discovery in Reno. Prior to the museum, she taught upper elementary age students in both Oregon and then locally in Nevada. She's passionate about integrated instruction and equity and access to museums. She seeks to inspire teachers and students in the joys of learning and science. And of course, I would love to thank our sponsors, Tesla, the lead sponsor of the museum's STEAM education programs, and Nevada Gold Mines. Big thanks to both of them for making all of this possible. And then I just have a quick reminder, this session goes until 11:50 and we will stop promptly at 11:50 to give everyone a break before the big concluding keynote speech. So thank you everyone, good morning, and I turn it over to Laura and Meghan.
Wonderful, thank you so much for the introduction. We're so happy to be here. And let me just get our presentation up here. Do we have the right view here? Yeah, all right, wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session today. We know how hard you work all week and on the weekends, often more than not as well. And so we're so grateful to have you here. And as we planned our virtual presentation for you, Meghan and I really had a glimpse into a small piece of your daily lives, just reinventing the wheel and relearning how to present information in a virtual fashion. And the upside of it is we get to see so many more of you than we would usually see in a typical year. So we're so happy about that. And in our planning for this workshop, we truly delved into the design thinking process ourselves in an effort to cover as much ground as we can this morning. We have listed, oh, give me one moment. There we go. We've listed our goals and our great expectations for our workshop today. And we plan to address the following content in our short time together. We'd like to define the design thinking process and discuss how it can be utilized in educational settings, describe how the design thinking process complements STEAM-based learning, and identify how literature can inspire design thinking in learning environments. So to kick off our session, we're going to start with a short activity that illustrates that design is all around us. In just a moment, when you hear the music start, you'll have a little over a minute to select one item in your household, one invention, one design that you find useful every day. When you return, please be sure to turn on your cameras and share your item in the camera, but also please type the name of the item you chose in the chat box. When we return, we're going to ask one of you to unmute and just share the answers to the reflections at the bottom of the slide. Why the invention you chose appeals to you, what problem it solves for you, and how it could be enhanced to better serve your needs. So go ahead and grab that item. All right, I'm seeing a lot of responses and I'm seeing a lot of you holding your design up. I see cell phones, ooh, Instapot, that's a great one. Scissors, coffee grinders, cable cord managers. We've got baby monitors, crochet hooks, 3x5 index cards, glasses, a microwave. I hope you didn't bring that back to us. This is fantastic. This quick activity really was just for the purpose of introducing us to the form, function, and aesthetics of design. And through our quick engagement in this exercise, we've actually considered 3 stages of the design thinking process: the empathizing stage, defining, and ideating. Would someone please unmute and just share with us what you chose, why it appeals to you, what problem your invention solves for you, and how it could be enhanced to better design, to better serve your needs?
I have a power cord here, the power patch that adapts, every lighting thing you have. I wish that it was wireless so that it could be traveled with, because it falls down. Even if I have it someplace, and if you anchor it too long, there's some places that you can't put it when you need all your cords to be in the same spot, especially if you're working in, let's say, a classroom office that only has one outlet to plug in your computer and all of the pieces. So
I agree.
wireless source of electricity, please.
That's great. Thank you, Hannah, for sharing. And we included just a silly little comic strip on here that really captures the role of that designers used to have. Historically, they were asked to make an already developed idea more attractive to consumers. And so they just had to kind of put a pretty bow or package on it. And now they're asked to create ideas to meet the needs of consumers. So a little bit of a role switch here. And that's really what we're going to be talking about, is that change in our design thinking presentation today. All right. So what we have here is the Institute of Design at Stanford. We have their design thinking model, and Megan will share later on in this presentation with you a few other models if you prefer a different model, but we're going to focus on this one for most of the presentation, and we're going to talk about what design thinking is, why we need to use it in our classrooms or educational settings, and how it works to serve us better. So we'll start with the what here. Design thinking is a process that helps us develop new answers to challenges. When we use this process in the classroom with our students, they learn to define problems, understand needs and constraints, brainstorm innovative solutions collaboratively, and incorporate feedback into their ideas and into their solutions to make them better. Most importantly, it's a human-centered approach to innovation. The design thinking process places a strong emphasis on empathy and problem solving. And the goal, the overriding goal of this process, is to create something of value for someone else, to listen closely to someone else's needs and interests, and to make something meaningful from it. And when I think of that definition of design thinking, I think that that is truly the definition of what all of you as educators do every day. You're all natural design thinkers, and you at the heart of your success is your human-centered approach to your students, to your instruction, to what you do every day. And why, now that we've talked about the what is this process and what is it for? Why should we use it in our classrooms? Well, first of all, because it's fun. Children are scientists at heart, and the design thinking process really stimulates curiosity and encourages students to delve deeper into the subject matter they're exploring. And other than being fun, this process offers tools to navigate our current age of increased connectivity, increased interactivity, and lightning speed changes to information that we're receiving. It's certainly our role as educators to enable a future generation of leaders who are great collaborators, great communicators, and innovators. This process will help us encourage our students to empathetically and intelligently shape the world. And this process also centers on a pedagogy that's aimed at creating breakthrough thinkers and innovators. And it really, really will help our students develop the tools needed to create change in today's world. And before we move on to the how of design thinking, we'd like to get an idea of how many of you are already using design thinking in your classrooms or your educational settings to help us inform our areas of focus in the presentation. So you're going to see a poll come up. If you please vote quickly. Have you implemented the design thinking process in your educational setting? Yes, no, or you're unsure. It sounds familiar, sounds like some project-based learning, but you're not quite sure if you've used this exact model. All right, votes are coming in. Thank you, thank you. Got about 5 more seconds to vote. All right, so it looks like about 40% of you have already used it in your setting, academic setting, which is phenomenal. 19%, nope, not yet, and unsure for 44%. So this might look a little bit familiar, but you'll need some more information to be sure. So thank you so much for helping us out here. So we've talked about the what, we've talked about the why, and let's talk about the how. How do we use design thinking in our classroom spaces? So I'm going to actually pop back here. The design thinking stages are not always sequential. So we want to make sure that we say that right off the bat. Students can complete them in order, but they may also complete them out of order. They may revisit them, repeat them in an iterative fashion. The design thinking process and how we use it really emphasizes each stage that practice makes progress. And we also wanted to make sure before we move on to discussing each stage individually of the design thinking process that you realize that you can really set the stage for the design thinking. You can actually provide the audience or the user in the first stage of empathizing. You can actually provide the resources for ideating and brainstorming, and work collaboratively with your students as really a co-learner in this process. So we'll look at each of the stages, and I've got the text up here. It's pretty text heavy, this slide, in case you're not an auditory learner. And we'll start with the first step, which is empathizing. And this is a stage that allows students to be focused on the needs of the user or the audience for whom they're designing. So they're thinking outside of themselves right now. They're not thinking what they would want. They're thinking what this specific age group would want, this specific audience would want in their design. So this is where you as an educator can assign the audience or who the users are. Defining is where the students clearly define the problem they're trying to solve in creating their design. So they are solving a problem based on the needs and insights of their user and their audience. Okay, so again, this is where you as an educator can provide a basic problem. And we're gonna show you in more detail an actual lesson plan that has design in mind in a little bit. Ideation is critical. That is just the wonderful brainstorming session in the design thinking process where students are challenged to brainstorm a ton of ideas, limitless, no idea is too big. This thought process does not start by thinking about, well, hang on, let's think about what our constraints are and let's brainstorm based on that. This is like if you could have anything in this design, what would it be? What would you want? So everyone has a voice, and nobody's shut down during this process. And we just put, this is when students can be silly, savvy, risk takers, wishful thinkers, and dreamers of the impossible. And it's after that is a group that your students work together to narrow those ideas down, to then think about what the constraints are. Prototyping is the rough draft portion of the design thinking process. So this is where your students are gonna, before they build their creation or construct it, they can illustrate it through a storyboard. They can write a sketch, an outline, build an actual physical model, an actual prototype to test out. And then testing is, again, where they are going to make tweaks to their design based on feedback from users or from other group members. And then they're going to modify. So this is very much an iterative process, repeating, and then going back to prototyping a new one because this didn't work, and then back to testing, and maybe all the way back up to ideating and defining. This isn't solving what we said we were going to solve. So as you can see, it's a very rich, very collaborative, and often repetitive experience. So here we have design thinking minds. Design thinking minds respond to challenges with creative confidence. And so it enables your students to, just like it says, have the confidence to create without fear of failure. It allows them to take risks and to be persistent in their endeavor to design without worrying about being right or wrong, without worrying about judgment. It helps students identify and define problems. Design thinking minds create innovative solutions, adopt a nothing is too big to solve attitude, and truly value collaboration and feedback from others. And students who embrace design thinking become system thinkers, become wildly and unabashedly different. They make connections between ideas and learn to think divergently. They grow to be more empathetic and learn to take creative risks. So we just included this because we thought this was a neat slide saying when your students embrace design thinking, these are all of the benefits. And this is John Spencer. He also, he's an educator, and he also has his own model of a design thinking process that called Launch that he uses effectively in the classroom that Megan will share with you later. And again, here we go. Before we move on, we've got one more poll to help us better serve your needs. We want to see who we have here. What grade levels do all of you primarily serve? So we know what areas of content to focus most heavily on for the rest of the presentation. So please go ahead and vote if you serve primarily K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, or all of the above, K through 8. See who we've got here. We've got about 5 more seconds to enter our votes here. All right. And it looks like we've got about 40% kindergarten through 2nd grade teachers, followed by 3rd through 5th, K through 8, and then 6th through 8. Thank you so much for your responses. That will help guide us here. All right. And just before we move on, starting with some kindergarten through 2nd grade design challenges, we wanted to address how nicely STEAM education and design thinking approaches align. So both approaches use science, technology, engineering, arts, and math as access points for guiding critical thinking, inquiry, and dialogue. Both of these processes are creative, real-world driven projects and solution-based, innovative, and collaborative. And whenever Megan and I present at the STEAM conference, we always just put in a reminder there with STEAM learning that it doesn't happen one subject at a time. We know that every letter stands for a different subject area, but it doesn't happen in a vacuum. STEAM learning always includes more than one subject at the same time. It's always open-ended and involves questioning, and it's always hands-on. And design thinking is the same way. You're not going to be practicing science without having some form of math or technology or art and engineering included in there. And we also know, being former teachers, that these approaches, design thinking and STEAM education, are truly more work for our educators. They require more planning, more preparation. They often contribute to a louder or livelier classroom environment, and they also result in richer lessons, and they address more standards at the same time. So we always say we know it's certainly more work to incorporate these strategies and methods into your teaching, but it's truly provides a rich experience. And we know that that, of course, is balanced with direct instruction and the benefits of direct instruction as well. And now we're going to just start to talk about reading and literature and how design thinking can be inspired through reading. We often think of design thinking or project-based activities as being scientific or mathematic. We don't necessarily think of them being inspired by reading, because we're just thinking of building and engineering and creating. But we really wanted to just address how reading and design thinking, again, align. When you're reading a story, you're really developing empathy for those characters that you're learning about. And when you're going through the design thinking process as well, you're empathizing with someone else, with the users or the audience that you're creating for. Reading enhances writing and vocabulary. The two go hand in hand. There's so much exposure to new vocabulary, which in effect improves your writing. Reading certainly increases creativity and improves focus. Design thinking does the same. And reading stimulates imagination. It can really take you into another world, and it can help your students make text-to-text connections or text-to-real-world connections. And reading, as well as the design thinking process, strengthens analytical thinking and certainly promotes mental stimulation. And we will move on here to the kindergarten through second grade design challenge example. So we're just going to provide some examples of different types of text, whether it be fiction, nonfiction, poetry, to give you an example of how you can use reading, how you can use literature and literacy to inspire design thinking projects. So we started off with the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. And for those of you who aren't aware of the 3 Billy Goats Gruff story, it is a story about 3 billy goats who need to cross a bridge to get to the other side of the meadow where there's fresh grass for them to eat. And they encounter this troll beneath the bridge who's threatening to eat anyone who crosses. And the first 2 billy goats make it across the bridge by promising a bigger and juicier billy goat to cross next. And then the 3rd billy goat uses his brute force to knock the troll into the river. So when you're story mapping with your kindergarten through 2nd grade students, and you get to the problem or the conflict in the story, this is where your design thinking inspiration is going to come from. How can we get these billy goats across to the other side of the meadow? So there's a few different approaches. So we're empathizing with the user, the audience, we're empathizing with the billy goats, and we're defining the problem. They need to safely get to the other side of the meadow without interference from the troll. And this is where your students are going to get together and brainstorm. How could they get to the other side? You can guide them as little as you like or as much as you like. You can simply present the design thinking project is that your students have to construct a different type of bridge, a bigger and better bridge that will allow their goats to get to the other side, or you can let them go really wild and have more flexibility, and they can consider designing maybe a watercraft or an aircraft or a tunnel, something else to allow them safe access to the other side of the meadow. And during this brainstorming process and during this ideation and before you're prototyping, you're going to provide your students with some inspirations. So you're going to provide them maybe with some books about bridges and bridge construction if they want to explore different styles of bridges that would prevent the troll from reaching them. You can provide books about transportation. You can also provide photographs. You can provide real models. You can provide videos or video clips of something to inspire them. This is just to really get the creative juices flowing and help them think about things and narrow down their idea. And then they can sketch their ideas. They can make a blueprint of what they decide, what mode of transportation, or if they are going to design a new bridge, they can sketch that out together, and they can start building. They can start prototyping and designing this 3D model. And we provided some examples of just very basic design materials for a design thinking challenge. We often think of design thinking as it has to be incredibly heavy in technology and use expensive resources and involve 3D printers and laser cutters. And while it does involve those things and it can also involve very inexpensive basic materials, because again, it's the process that we're focused on, the process of design. And so you can use any sort of materials for designing. It's just focusing on that process of empathizing, defining, ideating, prototyping, and testing. And so we just included these. And when your students are prototyping and building their models, feel free to have something that can represent the 3 billy goats to see if their model or structure supports them. It can be, you can use 3 different size blocks to represent the billy goats. And then allow them, if you'd like, to retell their story with their ending, like a choose your own adventure story, so that everyone gets to see what everyone else came up with, what creative solution to get across the bridge. And then you'll see throughout the presentation, we've aligned all of our design challenges with the next generation science standards for you, as well as the English Language Arts Common Core standards. And before we move on to our 3rd through 5th grade design challenge, we know that you are the best teachers of all. So if you would please start sharing some fiction titles. They can be kindergarten through 2nd grade inspired or 3rd through 8th grade inspired. Some fiction titles that you think would inspire a great design thinking lesson in the classroom. What book can you think of that has a great problem that the students could reflect on and solve through design thinking? And it can inspire. It doesn't have to be a direct solution to the problem. It can just be inspired by the problem in the story. So please go ahead and we'll see what we've got here.
For our teachers in the older grades, feel free to share books in the upper ranges as well, too.
Yes, please. We've got 3 Little Pigs. That would be a great one. Design a structure that can't be blown down. The Stinky Cheese Man. The Girl Who Never Made Mistakes. Rosie Revere Engineer. You Think It Is Easy Being the Tooth Fairy. I don't know that one. I need to read that one. Hatchet, always a good one. That's a really good one. Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. These are great, guys. My Lucky Day. These are great right off the bat. One's coming to mind to inspire this type of learning. Being Teddy Roosevelt. And I'm just, you know, as your students are doing this, you just think of all the communication and collaboration that's going on here and the STEAM learning that's being incorporated as well. It's incredibly cross-curricular approach to learning, and maybe Some of your students in their group aren't going to jump into the brainstorming session. They're not very outspoken or they're not comfortable, but they're really comfortable with the design process and the refining and building process. Maybe your strong students and strong leaders need to practice listening to others, and your independent workers might need some more help or practice, we should say, collaborating. And we've got some more great suggestions here in the chat box. No jumping on the bed. I see Tacky the Penguin, any of the Magic Treehouse series. So thank you so much for sharing all of these ideas that would inspire design thinking in the classroom. And I'm going to hand it over to Megan now to cover some of our design thinking challenge ideas for 3rd through 5th graders and 6th through 8th graders.
Thank you, Laura. One of the things that came up in our last session that we did not explicitly address in our presentation was, the challenges that you guys face in virtual instruction or the instruction right now in the classroom that is limited by constraints due to the pandemic. And so we just want to also acknowledge those, and that, as we are hands-on instructors, and so our presentation leans towards hands-on materials, we hope that these restrictions will not be permanent, and that these, that you guys can be back to using these kind of instruction techniques in full very soon, but we understand the limitation and challenges. We encourage you to dialogue in the chat box of ideas and things that you've done to, incorporate some hands-on instruction. Some of the things that we talked about in the last workshop was that, maybe students are working independently on their own design solutions, but that maybe some of that feedback is coming from their classmates, or the opportunity to test is from classmates. So again, just want to acknowledge all the challenges you guys are facing right now. So in 3 through 5, we wanted to diversify some of the different ELA pieces that you will find in your instruction. And for 3 through 5, we thought we'd talk about poetry for a second. We love this poem by Shel Silverstein and The Homework Machine. I'm just going to read it really quick to you and why it inspires this design process of making a complex machine. So, the homework machine, oh, the homework machine, most perfect contraption that's ever been seen. Just put in your homework and then drop in a dime, snap the switch, and in 10 seconds time, your homework comes out quick and clean as can be. Here it is, 9 plus 4, and the answer is 3. Oh me, I guess it's not as perfect as I thought it would be. So not only do we think that that's a perfect opportunity to introduce this design challenge that we're going to show you, but also I love that inside the poem, one of the themes of this poem is failure, and trying to come up with solutions in the process of that, not failure that sometimes comes with your design. So with this, we thought this could inspire the challenge to create a complex machine. Here are some books that we like that you might use in the classroom to give students some inspiration. There are also some amazing videos online of different Rube Goldberg machines that people have made. Rube Goldberg, in short, was a designer as well. He's actually a cartoonist, and he created complex machines to accomplish simple tasks. And so it was very theoretical, a little bit satirical of, kind of our nature to overcomplicate things. But we think that there's a real power in that in instructional design and an opportunity to collaborate and engage in the design process. So here in this design challenge lesson, we think this is one where you could narrow the challenge a little, and it could be for a 3rd through 5th grader who wants to ring a bell or light a light bulb through a multiple step complex machine. Again, you could go with something like create some kind of homework machine and make it very fantastical, or if you want to do a more hands-on lesson with this type of simple machine and complex machines, we think you could do something like this. So here in this, you'll see an overview of some of those different steps in the design process and what they might look like. So for the sake of time, I'm going to go on to the next slide, and we will talk a little bit. Oh, so Laura and I thought it would just be fun. We did do this lesson at the STEAM workshop a couple of years ago. If any of you were at that, we had so much fun with teachers. These pictures help give you an idea of just like found objects, recycled materials, anything that you have around the classroom. And then you can usually get some bells or some lights pretty inexpensively. And so that'd be, yeah, it was a super fun lesson, and we really had fun doing it with the teachers. I think you would have fun with your students. At the Discovery, we do a full week camp with this kind of lesson or unit. It's like in a week-long format. So, all right, on to our next one. Here's our alignment with those 3-5 alignment for those standards. If you are interested in doing a lesson like that, we've done that for you. And then we will go on to talk. Oh, in the chat box, if you guys could share some poems or other material that would help inspire some design challenges. In our last session, teachers had a little bit of harder time coming up with poems that they might use. So if you can't think of poems, feel free to offer up other whimsical things, like we talked about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Although that's fiction, I think there's a bit of whimsy you could incorporate there. So, and Laura, feel free to share out any of those ideas to see.
I'm seeing almost anything by Shel Silverstein. Absolutely.
Not a box. Another one that we read was this beautiful poem about, I forget the title of it, but a young girl who was separated from her best friend and just kind of like grieving the loss of her friend. And it was beautiful. We thought maybe you could have your students come up with communication techniques or strategies if you were separated from a friend.
Yeah, poems are really great inspirations. Songs are great inspirations. If you have any ideas of even songs in the messages in songs.
Keep a snowball from melting. I love that. Whimsical.
That's a great one. I love that. The snowy day. Design a contraption to keep the snowball from melting. That's fantastic. Oh, homework. Also a good one. These are great recommendations. And I entered Jack Lusky because he was a popular author of poetry when I taught first grade for years. He was probably a favorite, just second to Shel Silverstein.
Yeah, and there are a lot of good books that are poetry in with the illustrated format. So there might be ones that you guys think of, that picture books that are actually a poem with illustration.
Music lyrics we have by Jonathan Roy.
Dr.
Seuss. I'm going to have to look up Jonathan.
Great one.
I don't think I like poetry much until today. This is eye-opening. Well, thank you. That's fantastic. I agree with you. When I was teaching first grade, I was going like, poetry, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this? So it's true, right? It's not the norm and not what you would think about for a design thinking project. And again, it's just serving as an inspiration. So with the homework machine that we just heard Meghan read aloud, we didn't, it doesn't necessarily, their task doesn't necessarily have to be to design a machine that helps with homework, although it could be. They could design a machine that can press enter on the keyboard, right? Or that can staple something, or that can open a book, right? A part of helping with homework. But it can also simply just serve as an inspiration for a complex machine, which is essentially any machine that uses more than one simple machine working together to make something happen. So it doesn't have to fit perfectly. It's just got to give you that idea, that aha, what could I design based on this idea?
Yeah, great. Well, we're going to go. Feel free to keep adding ideas into the chat box, and we will go on just to share our 6th through 8th grade design challenge. In this 6th through 8th grade design challenge, we thought we'd talk a little bit about how you could use nonfiction as an inspiration. So some of the standards in 6th through 8th grade, they're really focusing on informational text or nonfiction. And we thought that those really work for this grade level to inspire design challenges because they are grounded in real world problems. So for example, this is an autobiography of Dr. Mae Jemison, and she was a scientist who went up in the Endeavour in 1992, and she was really interested and she studied during her time of there motion sickness and weightlessness, and so this is a real challenge that astronauts face, and so that was something that she wanted to work on designing solutions for and understanding. So this is just one idea that we thought might be of inspiration. We have some books. If on the next slide, there we go. Some different, in that space and exploration that might inspire some design challenges. If you were able to attend the keynote today, I think that those were some really great examples of actual engineers and artists working together at the JPL to like help problem solve and use a design process to address real world problems. We also thought that different weather related, like a study on weather could be something where the weather poses real challenges. Climate change is another topic that is addressed in 6th through 8th grade that we thought would be good. So we'll move on. Oh, here's just our alignment to the standards. And then we'll go ahead and start just dropping in the chat box collaborative ideas for informational text in your grade level that you think would be great for inspiring design challenges. So feel free to, again, do it at all grade levels. I know that you're saying we work on teaching informational text at all different levels. So feel free, we'd love to see your ideas on those.
You can enter concepts into the chat box that would be great real world concepts to cover that nonfiction or informational text would be based off of, or you can enter actual titles. So we can think of anything from biographies to
earthquakes.
Yeah. So that's where with the middle school age, you really can make these deep connections with current events, what's going on, and what's a solution that you have. They already know who the audience is, right? Who these events are affecting, particularly environmental events and things like that. So it really makes for some rich discussion. Conservation, that's a good one. Absolutely.
All right, I see Chris is giving us a warning. The time is so short, so we're just going to quickly move on to talk about how you can start to use design thinking language and integrate that in other areas like your writer's workshop. So we think that this is kind of the process you're already going through in terms of writing instruction. So replacing some of those words that you like draft with maybe ideate, that might be, a comparable step. And so starting to use that language in other areas is just our idea here. I'll drop into the chat box a article if you'd like to read a little bit more about real world authors using this process for their writing. Okay, and then going on to the next one, we just want to show you, writer's workshop, all of these different topics could be used with that design thinking to help improve these end products. All right, and then next one is just an overview of a few more design models. So again, this PowerPoint will be available for you to look at, but you can Google, the launch cycle. We love this. Sometimes it just, your students and what will connect with them, and something with illustrations might connect better, and this idea of being able to launch something. The create framework might be something to think about. If you're familiar with the 5E model of instruction, if you already use that with your students, you can talk to them about how that is also kind of that design process of it's non-linear, it's cyclical, we go back, we explore, we come up with new ideas. And then the IDEO, design thinking. So again, I feel like our time is always so short, but here is Laura and my contact information. We would love to talk with you further if you have questions after this workshop. We are pleased to be able to offer a prize for the first people who put into the chat box your email address and whether you are interested in some tickets to the Discovery or in Vegas or the Discovery in Reno. And we will give those to the first teachers who are able to put their name as well as which institution they are interested in. And we will be sending you a 4-pack to come visit us. Both of our institutions are open. We have, safety procedures and protocols in place. There, I feel like we've created safe environments to come back to informal learning, and we would love to see some of you guys and your families. If you have any questions at all, please reach out. Yeah, and Laura, do you have any closing remarks? I'm sorry we didn't have time for questions.
No, I think that sums it up. We really are grateful that you joined us. We hope you got a few ideas that you can take back to the classroom, whether virtually or for in-person instruction. And we truly hope to see you at our museums. We both have so many gallery spaces and exhibitions that encourage the design thinking process. And then just again, a huge thank you for you and all that you are doing and have been doing, particularly in this last school year. We do have study hall program at our museum where we are supporting distance learners. We have 50 students on site, and I am blown away by how engaging and interactive all of your programming has been, how you have just redesigned it and reinvented the wheel. So thank you for all that you do.
And thank you to our host, Chris and Tony.
And Tony.
Behind the scenes. It
Helping us.
Look smooth and easy. So
we'd be lost without you.
Thank you, everyone. And please enjoy the keynote speaker.
Yes.
The last keynote. And yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys.